Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video, we're going to take a look at King of New York. In King of New York, players are monsters battling over the city of New York. Let's jump right in with the description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, then I'll be back for some closing remarks.
This is King of New York, set up for a 3-player game. To set up, each player picks a monster and takes the corresponding figure and monster board. You set your points to 0 and your life to 10, no matter who you are. Then you take the 2 special cards and set them beside the board. Then you shuffle the remaining cards and put 3 face up to form a market. Next, you shuffle the tiles and make 3 stacks of 3 in each borough with the building side up. The units will be on the opposite side, but you only want to be able to see the top one in each stack. Other than that, you just form a supply of energy cubes, tokens, and the dice that you're going to use during the game. Players choose a starting player who places his figure anywhere on the board except in Manhattan, so we'll throw him in the Bronx. Then the next player goes and he can place anywhere as long as there's 2 or less figures in one area, but again, not in Manhattan. So he could still place in the Bronx because there would be 2 guys there, but then this guy would not be able to place there because that would make 3. So he's going to throw here and he's going to throw here. So players take turns that are composed of 5 phases, which are roll dice, resolve dice, move, buy cards, and the end of your turn phase. The game ends when one player reaches 20 points or only one monster is left standing. So let's go over the phases of a turn. During the roll dice phase, you can roll the dice up to 3 times, keeping any previous rolls and then rolling again. You can even re-roll dice for the 3rd roll that you kept during the 2nd roll. So after your 3rd roll, you must resolve all the dice. You can choose the order that you resolve them in, but you have to resolve all dice of the same type at the same time. What I mean by that is you have 2 attacks face up here. You can resolve anything before or after the attacks, but these 2 attacks would have to happen together. So let's go over what the dice do. For every lightning bolt symbol you have, you take 1 energy cube from the supply. For every heart, you heal 1, but you can never go past your maximum health of 10, which you start the game with. For each attack symbol, you deal damage, and you deal damage to characters in opposing locations. For purposes of the game, you're either in Manhattan or you're not. So if you're in Manhattan, you deal 1 damage to every character not in Manhattan for each attack die rolled. But if you're not in Manhattan, you deal 1 damage to every character in Manhattan for each attack die rolled. If you're not in Manhattan, and there's no one in Manhattan, then your attacks essentially do nothing because you only attack the opposite group. And note that any character reaching 0 health is immediately eliminated from the game. Next is destruction, and destruction look like this. When you roll these, you can do damage to the buildings or units in your area. Units are just the opposite side of buildings, but you'll see each building has a certain amount of health. For instance, this one is 1, whereas this one would be 2. And if you can do enough damage using these destruction tokens to destroy one, you take the corresponding reward, which in this case would be 1 point, and then you flip it over so it becomes a unit in that area. Then you could proceed to attack the building under it, but you cannot attack units the first turn they are flipped. But on a later turn, you can certainly attack units, and any destroyed units you just keep in front of you. It's also important to note that if you rolled enough destruction to destroy something, you must. So if I rolled 2 destruction, for instance, in this area, I have to destroy something because I'm able to, because this only has 1 health or this has 2. But I can choose what to destroy, so even though I have 2 destruction, I could still just destroy this, even though that would not be optimal because destroying this would be using all of my die, but I don't have to do so. Any destruction left over that don't destroy anything are just lost. Next is celebrity, which are these stars here. Normally they don't do anything unless you roll 3 of them together, and when you do roll 3 of them together, you immediately take the superstar card, either from the supply or from the player who has it. When you take this card, you get 1 point, then you get 1 additional point for each extra star you rolled. So for example, if you rolled 5 stars, you needed 3 to get him, but then that was 2 extra, so you get 2 more points there. But as long as this guy's in front of you, you get 1 point every time you roll a star from then on, but somebody else can steal him when they roll 3 stars. And lastly are ouches, and they look like this, these skulls. If you roll 1 ouch, all the units in your borough attack you. So for example, if it was the sheriff's turn, we can see that there's 2 units right now in his borough, so he would take 2 damage. You don't take damage based on the strength of the unit, you just take 1 damage per unit. However, if you roll 2 ouches, all units in your area attack all monsters in your area. So if this guy was also here, Sheriff would take 2 damage, as would Captain Fish. And then if you roll all 3 ouches, then every unit across the whole board attacks the guys in his corresponding borough. So for instance, Draconis could even be attacked if there was units in his area, but you still get attacked as normal. Also, when you roll 3 ouches, you immediately take the Statue of Liberty card, which gives you 3 points. And if somebody takes that card from you later, you lose those 3 points. So as long as you have this card in front of you, you have 3 extra points, but as soon as it's gone, you lose those points. So after you've resolved all your dice, you move on to the move phase. If no one is in Manhattan, you immediately move to Manhattan and you start at the lowest space. In a 2 to 4 player game, there's only room for 1 guy in Manhattan, but in a 5 or 6 player game, there's room for 2. So you'd move into this space. If then it was a 5 or 6 player game, there would be another space here that would count as empty. But if Manhattan is full, you can either stay where you are or move to another barrow that has 2 or less guys in it. Remember, you can never exceed 2 guys in a barrow. And lastly, if you're already in Manhattan during your turn, you move up 1 space along the track, along the same number. So if you're in the 5 or 6 place, you move up in the 5 or 6 spaces. But if you're in the 2 to 4s, you move up along the 2 to 4s. After movement is the buying cards phase, and players can buy cards from this supply by paying with energy cubes corresponding to their cost. So all 3 of these actually cost 4, so you could pay 4 cubes. Also, you could pay 2 cubes to wipe these out and draw 3 new cards from the deck to have more opportunities to buy. And you can alternate between discarding the cards and buying them as much as you'd like. And lastly is the end of turn. Some card effects happen at this time, but generally speaking, you're just going to pass the dice left. So before we get to the playthrough, I want to talk about Manhattan in a little bit more depth. If during your movement phase or at the end of your turn no one's in Manhattan, you have to move in there. Or if there's an empty space in Manhattan in a 5 or 6 player game, because there should be 2 guys in there. When you're in Manhattan, you cannot use hearts to heal, though you can use card effects. So any hearts you roll in your die essentially do nothing. When you enter Manhattan, you immediately score 1 point, but the only way to leave Manhattan is to be attacked and choose to flee. So if, for instance, this player attacked because he's not in Manhattan, you know he only attacks the characters in Manhattan, this guy would still take the damage, but afterward he can choose to flee. If he chooses to flee, he can move to any region that has less than 2 guys as normal, and then because there will be an empty space in Manhattan, his attacker will have to move in during his movement phase. In a 5 or 6 player game where both spaces in Manhattan are occupied, the player in the 2 to 4 space gets to choose if he wants to flee first, and then if the player in the 5 or 6 place doesn't flee, he shifts down to that 2 to 4 space as he continues moving up. This is significant because in a 5 or 6 player game, if a player ever gets eliminated that lowers the count below 5 players, this space is immediately evacuated and only the 2 to 4 space is going to be in use for the rest of the game. In all cases, if you start your turn in Manhattan, you get some bonuses. If you're in lower Manhattan, you get 1 point and 1 energy at the beginning of your turn. If you're in Midtown, you get 2 points and 1 energy at the beginning of your turn. And if you're up in the top of Manhattan, you get 2 points and 2 energy if you start your turn there. But once you're at the top, you can no longer move up during the movement phase. So the game ends at the end of a turn when a player reaches 20 points or is the last standing. This is significant because a player must survive until the end of a turn in order to be declared the winner. Let's get going with this example playthrough. So the Draconis player is going to go first, so he takes the dice and he rolls them. Now he can choose to re-roll as many or as few as he'd like. He's definitely going to re-roll these hearts and he's going to re-roll these ouches as well. So he does so, but he's going to keep this one aside. Now, for his last turn, he can even re-roll the ones he kept aside from the first time, but he's going to re-roll most of these here again. So he's finished rolling. Now he has to resolve all of these because he's already at 10 hearts. This one does nothing, and unfortunately, he only got 2 stars, so again, you need at least 3 to take the superstar card. And then he gets 2 energy because he rolled 2 of these, so he puts those in his area, and then he got 1 ouch. Now all the units in his burrow would attack him. Fortunately for him, there's none there yet, so he takes no damage. Now he goes on to his movement step because there's no one in Manhattan. He jumps in, and you know when you enter Manhattan, you score 1 point. So he indicates that on his board. And now it's the buying cards phase of his turn. He only has 2 money, so he can't afford any of these, but he could afford to discard them all and draw 3 more, but he doesn't want to do that at this time. So for his end of turn phase, he's just going to pass the dice. It's going to be the sheriff's turn, so he's going to start by rolling them. So he rolled a whole lot of destruction, you can see here, and he likes that, so he's going to keep that, but he's going to re-roll this other 2 here. So he gets an attack and a heart. He's going to re-roll the heart because the heart doesn't really help him yet. So wow, he finishes with 5 destruction and 1 attack. Because he's not in Manhattan, you know the attack damages everybody in Manhattan, which is Draconis. And he can choose at this time to flee if he'd like to, but he's going to stay there. And then he's got 5 destruction that he can wage within the Bronx. So the first thing he's going to do is he's going to destroy this one. And he knows when he destroys that, he gets 1 point because there's 1 star down here. So he takes that and he scores a point. And then he still has 4 left. For this, he's going to destroy this one, which costs 2 to destroy, and he gets 2 energy for doing so. Remember, you can't destroy units the turn they're flipped, but you can destroy buildings as they continue to flip. Then he's going to destroy this one up here for another 1 point, and then he's going to destroy 1 more for 1 more point. So there's a whole lot of units in his area now, so he needs to be careful because if somebody rolls a lot of skulls, he's going to be in trouble. But now it's his movement phase, and because Manhattan is already full, he can choose to move, which he is going to do. So he's going to jump down here and leave all those units in the Bronx by themselves. He chooses not to buy anything, so then he's going to pass the dice and it goes to the next player's turn. We're going to jump ahead a little bit in the game to when you can see some more things happen. Welcome back. It's getting near the end of the game. Draconis just rolled, and he rolled 3 ouches. So first thing that's going to happen is he's going to take this card, so this guy immediately loses the 3 points, and then he's going to get those 3 points because you only have the 3 points when you have this card. So then, because he rolled 3 ouches, ouches, we resolve the attacks in all areas of the board, meaning he's going to take 2 damage because there's 2 units in his area. This guy's going to take 3 damage because there's 3 units in Manhattan, so he's down to 2 health. And then the other guy, Captain Fish, is going to take 2 damage as well because there's 2 units in his part of town. So then next he resolves the energy cube, so he takes the energy cube. Then he's going to attack Manhattan twice because he has 2 attacks. So unfortunately for the sheriff, he is totally out of the game because he is at 0 health. Now during his movement phase, Manhattan's empty, so he has to go in and he gets 1 point for doing so. And he decides he doesn't want to buy any cards right now, so it's going to go over to this guy's turn because the sheriff is out. So he's going to roll the dice and resolve them as normal. So he would like to do some damage to the other guy, but he's thinking he can get some points as well. So he's going to keep that one, and he's going to re-roll the rest. And he's got a whole lot of destruction, and he's going to re-roll some more. So because he has the superstar card, these are actually worth points, so he gets 2 points for those. And then he has 3 value of destruction. He decides he's going to first resolve this because all the guys in his area are going to attack him, so he's going to take 2 damage from that. So he's down to only 2 health. He's barely just hanging on. And he's going to use these to get 3 health right back by destroying this. So he flips that and he takes his 3 health, and then it goes back to the other guy's turn. And he's just gonna stop there because he knows he can win the game. So he does 1 damage to this guy. This guy is defeated, so he's out of the game, provided that this guy can survive the rest of his turn. So he has 2 destruction. He might as well kill a tank here to get 1 health back. And then this heart does nothing, and the star does nothing as well. So for his movement, he goes up in Manhattan and is the last surviving player at the end of his turn. So Draconis is the winner.
There's some natural comparisons to be made between this and King of Tokyo because mechanically and thematically they're the same game. Just this one has a few more things added. My favorite of which is the movement step and the fact that there's more than just 2 places on the map, and there's some cards that benefit you in certain places or even cheaper to buy in other places, so it does kind of matter where you are, and I think that's really neat. The other thing I really like is that there's an alternative way to damage people, and that is with the ouch dice. So you can do large amounts of damage to somebody without really giving them the option to flee Manhattan, or in the old game, Tokyo. The one thing King of Tokyo does have an advantage over this is both of these games are very light, so they're going to be played in light settings, but King of Tokyo is easier to teach because they're just less there, and it plays a little bit quicker as a result. But overall, I mean, this is definitely, in my opinion, the better game, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the better for your particular group setting. So if it looked fun to you, check it out. That's King of New York.